Hey Eric, so we've been in long-term relationships. I'm currently in another long-term relationship.
Yeah.
This one is about 5 years, and have you ever known that at the beginning of a relationship, when you're getting to start to know each other, like no question is too big an ask, is it?
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. That the other person, the in our case, the woman could ask us to do anything, and we're like, how fast can I do it? It's like
Yeah,
just
yeah.
all the energy in the world.
It's like here in the UK we call them bins, and I know you guys over the pond you call it trash. It's like, can you put the bins out? Can you
Yeah.
put the trash down? It's like, yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or hey, you know what? Another good example is the toilet seat. Hey, do you mind putting the toilet seat? Oh yeah, no problem.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then over a period of time, something really interesting happens.
That's right. So more on that in a moment. But first,
Welcome to the 𝗙𝗏𝗲𝗀 podcast. This is the show for dads, all about fatherhood, faith, and freedom, one conversation at a time. Yeah, so before that break, as we were saying, over a period of time, something really interesting happens. Those things that were like no problem and we're all energetic,
yeah.
become chores. And eventually it's like, hey, can you put the trash out?
All
Can you put
right,
the
I'll
toilet seat
do
up? It's
it.
like, yeah, all right, all right.
Yeah. So why does that happen?
Yeah, well, listen, there's a reason for that, but I don't think that's something for us to get into on this episode. It's something that I'd really love to dig a lot deeper into. Why when a relationship extends in time, why is it that those things that were no bother, no issue at the beginning, become less easy for us to kind of respond to in the same energetic fashion? I think that's a great podcast.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to share on this episode is something you and I spoke about while we were off air. Is there's some magical questions,
Right.
and I think these magical questions really help you, to get to know your spouse. Like this episode is called "Do You Even Know Your Spouse?"
Yeah.
And I think the more you get to know each other and connect, the less easy it is for those little things to become challenging, and for you to kind of keep that spark and that energy. So there's some real magical questions that I'd love for you to share with our audience.
Yeah. Let's pull that up. So the key with these questions is helping you to know your spouse. It's easy to think maybe that oh yeah, I know my spouse, but like earlier again when we were off air, we're talking about how when 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 a man and woman first get together, the questions are often very superficial that they'll ask each other. What's your favorite color? What's your favorite kind of food? And things of that nature. Nothing wrong with those, but it's kind of superficial knowledge. And I think that you had a really good um, explanation of where color can lead to, right?
Mm,
So if I'm a woman and I'm or and you're asking me what's my favorite color, and then I respond purple, right? Why don't you walk
yeah,
us through a little bit of what where
yeah.
that
So
can lead and help you know somebody at a deeper level?
yeah, so that's kind of like what we call the surface structure. It's like, what is your favorite color? It's purple, and that's great information to have,
Yeah,
but not something that you could really utilize. And I'm a big fan of utilization over usefulness, because there's tons of useful information and knowledge available. You only have to open, Google or any other type of search window to get useful information. But to get something that you can really utilize, so that's the surface level. And we want to go a little deeper. It's almost like the tip of the iceberg.
yeah.
Underneath the water level, there's so much more of the iceberg underneath. So we want to get to the deep structure. So if someone says, "Oh, my favorite color is purple," it's great. So when you think of the color purple, how does that make you feel?
So
That's
that
a
would
great,
be that would be the good follow-up question to
yeah.
yeah.
So when you think of the color purple, how does that make you feel? And when I think of purple, it makes me feel kind of all warm and fuzzy and safe. And
Yeah.
those are the keywords. That's now the deep structure. It's like, so are there any other times, any other activities, anything else that springs to mind that makes you feel warm and fuzzy and safe? And it's like, yeah, when I'm going for a walk in the park and we're holding hands.
Yeah.
So now it's more meaningful than that. Just I like the color purple. It's like now you've got the feeling associated with purple, and you've got
Yep.
some other thing or activity that invokes that same feeling.
Yeah.
Now you can utilize that.
Now you could ask your spouse to go for a walk in the park with you, and maybe you bring purple flowers, and you just tie in, you know, things on a kind of an intrinsic level. And you mentioned a word that is, it's really a power word for women, which is safe. Like, so if you're a man and you hear your woman say something like, you know, this makes me feel safe, you better pay attention. That's a big one.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
a wake-up call, guys.
A lot of women leave men because they don't feel safe. They lack that security feeling with their man. So you know, you basically lose your woman's attention.
Yeah. So I know we're going to go through this this list of questions. If you're if you're watching the YouTube version of this, they're on the screen now. If you're listening to the audio only, I really highly suggest and invite you to come and check out our YouTube channel. You'll get some extra graphics, and you'll obviously get to see you know, Eric
You'll
and
get to see our smiling faces.
Yeah, you'll get to see our smiling faces. But before we dive into those questions, I want to just share my own experience. You know, I'm in my second long-term relationship. I was in a previous marriage for 20 years. You know, my current relationship, my darling wife Jess, we've been in a relationship for about 5 years now, and something about this relationship is really interesting. We connect, and if you've listened to previous podcasts, you probably have heard me mention that Jess and I connect on multiple levels, and it's probably one of the most interconnected relationships I've ever had. And the reason for that is, you know, we don't have tech. The amount of times we go out, you know, we'll go for dinner somewhere, we'll just go for a few drinks. We'll have, if we're fortunate enough that, you know, our baby Vincent is with Nana today, we'll go into town and just spend just an hour with each other. Yeah. Okay, our phones are not out, but we'll see everybody else, other partners and spouses, and they're sat at the same table and they're both on their phones doing their own thing and they're not even talking. So yeah, we have talked from the outset. The first date that we ever had was literally we stayed up all night for 5, 6, 7 hours and just chatted all night.
Right.
And when we talk, of course, we ask a lot of questions. So I wanted to share that is one of the reasons why I believe this relationship is one that I feel the most connected in any relationships that I've ever had, short, medium, long term, is because of the amount of talking that we do and the amount of connecting, the amount of being present in each other's presence and really listening and asking questions. So the power of questions are really important. Now we're doing that naturally, but Eric's going to share with you, you know, these 8 magical kind of power questions, you know, these 8 secrets.
So for the people that are in listen only mode, we're just going to walk through these questions. So the first one, and we're titling this 8 secrets to know your spouse. So the first one is, what side of you have I brought out recently? So imagine the power. If you're a man and you go to your spouse or your significant other and you say, hey, what side of you have I brought out recently? And then just shut up and listen.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe take notes. I think that's a powerful question. And so I guess in respect of time that we try to keep these podcasts down to, we're gonna have to move fairly quickly. So
yeah, I was just going to move straight into number 2 there. So
yeah, let's just go.
Second question is,
yeah,
how did your body feel during you know, during our last date? And here's a big tip for you guys, you know, and girls, because I know there's some females that are listening to this podcast too. If you haven't had a date recently, make the effort to have a date night every week.
Yeah, that's problem number 1. So this question presumes that you are still dating your spouse. And if you're not, that's a whole nother episode. Okay, number 3, do I make you feel more energized or de-energized than in the past? This is a fairly this is a deep question. So prepare to spend some time, prepare to listen.
Yeah. And also, if I could just interject there, Eric, it's a big tip off as well. But clearly, if it's more de-energized, there's something currently happening,
right.
you know, that ought to change, because, you know, relationships should always make you feel, you know,
Yeah. If it's
energized.
not lifting you up, it's bringing you down. There's no kind of neutral in relationship land.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah. Question number 4: is there something about me that you're curious about? I love that question.
yeah, now this is, this is kind of a lighter question, almost, of just inviting them to say, anything. Maybe they've noticed something about you, and they just, this gives them an opportunity to open up. Number 5, have I made you laugh recently? Well,
Yeah.
hey, again, like we were talking about off air, if you don't make your woman laugh once in a while, that's an issue. Maybe the relationship's just gotten kind of stale or too serious, or that kind of thing. So, kind of, there's a time for all of that, right? For being serious and all that. But there's got to be some laughter. I think, the saying laughter is the best medicine. There's a reason that that's such a popular and long-standing idea.
Yeah. And the 6th question is, you know, did you feel heard?
Yep. Did you feel heard? So you could say, you could phrase that as do you feel heard, or did you feel heard? Maybe make that a specific question. Maybe you had a big conversation in the recent past or something, and you could reference that and say, hey, did you feel heard during that conversation? And again, the key is shut up and listen, and just be ready to accept anything that they might say. So number 7, do you feel attractive in my presence? Oh, wow, I think that's a huge one.
It is, for sure. And finally, that question number 8, do you feel captivated, bored, or something in between? I think is a really, really good question to capture, kind of that state that the relationship is in as well.
Yeah, because again, going all the way back to the beginning of our conversation, and in fact, the beginning of a relationship, I'm just going to pull these questions down. In the very beginning, obviously you're captivated by each other. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing anything. But the challenge is maintaining captivation, so to speak, throughout the relationship.
Yeah.
And things like date nights and things like asking these types of questions of each other can really reignite that captivating emotion that we should be having for each other.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. So listen, if you're in one of those kind of relationships where you don't get to ask a lot of questions, then this is what I invite you to do. So again, feel free to reject anything I'm about to say, but I invite you to maybe take these 8 questions, and once a week, have these questions written out, have them in your phone as a list, and share them with your spouse. And you ask the questions to your spouse, and have your spouse ask you the questions. And if some of them don't fit the context of your week, so for example, if you didn't have a date that week, it doesn't have to be the question about date, could just be a question about the past 7 days, the past week.
Right. No, that's a good point.
So change that context, and I guarantee you will upgrade, the level of your connectedness, the level of your presence, and you will really get to know your spouse by asking these questions on a regular basis.
Hey, and so maybe in terms of just kind of landing this plane, we did an episode recently called "Questions Are the Answer." So if you're trying to figure out whether or not you know your spouse, I think questions are the way to figure that out.
Most definitely.
Okay, so what are we talking about next, Steve?
So the next episode, we're going to do another Unplugged. So here's a useful point to segue. If you're listening now and you have something burning, a burning question, a burning topic, something of curiosity or interest that you would love Eric and I to kind of raise and chat and talk about, then contact us and reach out to us and let us know what it is. Otherwise, Eric and I will just go unplugged. So the next episode, we will just go live and we'll talk about whatever the topic of the day is.
Absolutely. And so the way that you can send us a question is just go to allieddads.com. You can find all of our contact info there, and we'd love to hear from you. And hey, if you're not subscribed yet, do that. Hit the bell notification so that so you'll get a notification. We release episodes every Thursday. And I think that's about it. You got any last thoughts, Steve?
Only that you will always find us on your favorite streaming channel.
There you go. All right. Thanks for being here.
Yep. Great to speak to you again.
All right. Bye-bye.